Unfortunately, we have divided authority and divided responsibility, and you can't blame all this on the executive department because they don't have any money to spend that Congress doesn't give them. You can't blame it all on the legislative branch because there are certain opportunities the president has to freeze funds. But when he freezes funds that Congress appropriates, the congressmen go nuts. They denounce him from every housetop and on the floor of Congress every time it convenes. They start investigations. They got one running in the Senate now to determine whether he has authority to freeze these funds. We vote these funds in appropriations that far exceed the budget requests, and then we blame the president when we wind up with a deficit.
It is in our personnel department, yes.
In other departments?
According to this report, it is not. Now, I don't mean that they didn't particularly say discrimination, but they hinted at the fact that there was some. There could be some areas in which it may appear that discrimination is there because there's nothing that says there's not, or because there are no black employees there.
As a city manager, is it one of your goals to see that discrimination is ended in all facets of city employment?
Certainly. I would like for the time to come when you don't even ask about this, when it's so obvious that there's no discrimination, or when people get the jobs not on the basis of black or white, but just on the basis of wanting a job, wanting to do their work, and qualified. I find some may be a little awkward to start. For example, it says put into every department the procedures. Well, we cannot put into police and fire departments the personnel procedures that we apply elsewhere because the law prohibits this. So I cannot do it. Maybe the Civil Service Board could put this into practice. Oh, I think that if we can do it, why can't they? I mean, you know, if we find it practical to put some of these into operation.
It surprised me that the President of the United States at this juncture would make the statement that he's made, and it seems to me that that kind of statement coming from the President himself portends the very kind of struggle that you're talking about. It certainly creates a real dilemma for us. We had counted on the possibility of getting some help from the federal government to carry out the court order which requires extensive busing. It seems now that the President is in severe disagreement with the mandate of the federal courts, including the United States Supreme Court, and has virtually removed the possibility of there being federal help at the local level.
I fully recognize that we carry a heavy responsibility. The successful merging and coordinating of 24 separate departments, boards, related commissions, and advisory groups will not be accomplished easily, but will be carried out with a firm commitment to the mandate handed us by the people in the General Assembly and approving reorganization. Our overriding objectives will be to streamline all the functions to be housed in the new Department of Natural and Economic Resources, remove duplications where they exist, and to mold the organization into a workable unit with all its facets reflecting a single policy objective, the economic development of North Carolina within the framework of a protected natural environment.
The decision matter is getting closer, and I will, of course, make that decision, I hope, early this fall.
Can you get any more specific than early this fall?
No, I really can't. I'm not trying to be coy. I'd like to be able to say, October 15th or November 1st or something, but I really can't because I'm still in the process of taking a good hard look at various key states.
Irvin Executive Vice President Alan Brown said he just learned of the action. In his words, it would be premature to comment until we have reviewed in detail the allegations in the
Looking back after hearing him, I was very impressed with him, but I can't conceive of him being a serious contender for the presidential nomination.
Why not?
Well, because of the new 18-year-old vote, because of the progressive image of the Democratic Party, and it seems to me that Senator Jackson's he's about a generation ahead of me, and he came across as not so progressive even to me, and I think I'm pretty conservative.
Where the blacks and the whites were treated with no respect whatsoever from your chairman, Mr. Earl Gluck. And I am speaking personally for myself, the members in our community, and the blacks that live on the south side, Dalton Village, would like to request the resignation of Mr. Earl J. Gluck because he has no consideration for anyone, regardless of race, creed, or color.
Thank you, Ed.
And 18 months ago when we initiated this project, we was thinking about our officers living in the city and we was thinking about our officers living in high crime areas. And as we get into it further, we find that our officers do not live in high crime areas. Very few of them do. They know where to live and where they'd rather live, and they most of them go out in the country and out into the county. And so I don't know whether or not our city fathers would go along with our officers taking these blue and white cars out into the county back and forth to work or not. But I can see definite advantages in them doing so, in that they do shop in the city, they do go to sporting events in the city, they attend Coliseum functions and functions at stadiums, and I think the conspicuousness of these cars at these various locations would be a detriment to crime.
Well, Mr. Bratton, you must be mighty happy today.
Well, I am feeling awful happy today.
Did you expect to win last night?
Well, I had it in my mind, I just wasn't too sure.
But you haven't taken a day off to celebrate today.
I haven't thought about it. I thought working would be better. Well, I think this is a lovely town in which to live. We haven't had any problems at all here, and we work together as one big family, and I love Clover, and it's the only place I know about. And I'd love to see Clover be one of the outstanding places in which to live.
We have not reached the point in our development where the dominant group parents really don't understand the problem to the extent that black people and black children have suffered for such a long time and abided by a very bad law until it was changed. Now when you have to bus white students into schools which were supposed to be equal before the May 17, 1954 decision, busing white kids into black neighborhoods is a bad thing. And it's something that we can't tolerate, we are told. So therefore, this hassle is mostly based on racial prejudice rather than common sense. What we don't like about this entire educational scene at this time is the continuation of using busing as a political football. I think that the politicians are taking advantage of a situation which they shouldn't, because we know busing is not a desegregation plan. We also know that busing is nothing new. I'm in a community in Mecklenburg County where the county school board 1 year spent all of the bond money to construct consolidated schools. And busing was a normal procedure. They bused all the people there. Nobody was mad about busing. Confusion in relation to the position that people in government who are to implement effective assistance so far as desegregation of public schools is concerned, I'm quite sure they are confused. So the meeting is very timely, and it's important that we do have it at this time.
The preservation and enhancement of the grade school and high school level of public education in North Carolina. I think that's going to be the main challenge and the main thing that's going to occupy the next governor. And I certainly would be prepared to devote a lot of my time to it if I'm successful and if I run and am elected. We'll see to it that the level-headed, moderate, middle-of-the-road people that I feel all of us here are stay in command of this particular situation and puts to the side and keeps in the minority the fellow that says I'm going to put the blacks in their place or the fellow that says I'm going to put the whites in their place.
For the past month, Hugh Morton has been on the pre-campaign trail, testing his political strength across the state. Mecklenburg County is number 90 on his sweep through the state's 100 counties. All of them, he says, have left him optimistic about entering the gubernatorial race.
The professional poll that we've been paying $9,000 for is just about in. We've gotten some of the raw information on it, and to my untrained eye, it looks pretty good. Morton would be number 2 to Taylor right now in a 3-man race. I had figured in the beginning that I would be number 4 in a 4-man race until about Christmas, and then with some hard work and good luck, I could probably pull ahead to the number 3 spot by Christmas, and then by some more hard work and good luck, I could be number 2 by April, which is all you have to be in order to get into the runoff. And so now it looks like I'm way ahead of my timetable if I interpret it correctly, and I think maybe I'll be number 3 by Labor Day instead of by Christmas. So things are going pretty good.
The counties and municipalities continue to have their authority to regulate sales, Sunday sales of beer and wine on all premises between the hours of 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon and 7 o'clock on Monday morning. After October 1, this will change, and those same hours and their authority will continue except as to brown bagging premises. And after October 1, they cannot regulate Sunday sales of beer and wine on brown bagging premises.
That he's a politically motivated man. As time gets shorter, thinks is... Well, I think one thing it does definitely mean is confusion. I believe that that's going to be the first and immediate effect of it, today, tomorrow, for the next week or so. Because the thing was, the whole process was sprung on the community all of a sudden last night. We don't know how many people knew about it, but certainly this community, I don't think, knew anything about it.
If the economists are confused, the average working person is even more perplexed.
Does this mean that our employees have to be limited when they come to ask for a wage increase? Bob, I feel that our employees should be able to be allowed to have wage increases to the extent that the steel workers and the rail workers have had.
What do you think about the president's message?
I agree with him.
How will it affect you?
I don't know that it'll affect me so much, but it'll affect the whole overall economy, and that'll affect me.
How will the president's wage and price control measures affect you?
Well, it won't at the present, but it will later on.
How?
Through food prices and all.
Won't affect me now, because I don't make much no how.
How great an effect the president's wage and price control measures will have on this area won't be known for some time. But one thing is almost certain, that Charlotte's economic structure is in for some sweeping changes. Bob Serkin, WBTV News.
The position has again become embroiled in politics as it has in the past. Councilman Jim Whittington is reported to be promoting District Fire Chief Ken Coble, a longtime friend. Other councilmen resent Whittington trying to get reins on the fire department, saying Chief Otis Dowdy is the best qualified at this point. Sources at City Hall say some chief officers in the department are willing to play politics, but Dowdy will not because he dislikes having to answer to 7 men rather than the city council. The sources at City Hall say Dowdy is a professional fireman and not a politician. The chief officers have always been under pressure from councilmen when firemen or the firemen's union elects not to use the chain of command when there is a grievance. Observers of the fire department, including a number at City Hall, say unless the city council selects Dowdy, there will be a morale problem in the department. They say the men will question chances for future advancement into positions of leadership. As for the men in the department, Dowdy is not the most popular chief officer. They say he is tough, but fair. In the final analysis, he is not in a popularity contest with the firemen, but it comes down to that with the council. Paul Jones, WBTV News.
Well, the purpose of this camp is to give recreational activity to boys 10 through 15 years old, and also is to serve as a delinquent deterrent, that is to get these kids out of the street. Here in Anderson County, we do not have
As yet, the camp has no name, but a tour of the facilities, a talk with the directors and the counselors and all of the military people, and especially to see the faces of the young campers here suggests one good possibility. That is camp enthusiasm. Bill Ballard, WBTV News in Anson County.
or any type of recreational program for boys. And so this idea came about, and really this is the purpose of this camp.
It's obvious that it's been successful.
Yes, it is. I think if you'd come around on Friday afternoons and to the graduation ceremonies, you will see that it has been successful. And probably this morning in your tour, you saw it on the faces of the kids.
Will you be able to continue it next year?
Yes, I think we will. With the enthusiasm in the civilian community, I think that this project will be a continuing project. I don't think they will let it go down the drain now. But, it's a great program, really.
those who represent a great deal of the economic power in this country, men like Leonard Woodcock and George Meany, who were not consulted in advance, do not feel that in the interests of the people they represent that they can support the policy. I think that's a major mistake on the part of the president, and I believe that he should have consulted with these men, and perhaps then he would have seen how necessary it was that the policy be fair, and it's not fair.
Senator Harris, what do you see as the main issue for the 1972 campaign?
Well, I think it's the question of whether we can put the country together again across race lines and age lines and get America back to the kind of fundamentals we always said we believed in, and that is the value of every human being and the fact that being an American entitles one to some basic and decent share in the good things in our society.
Do you see the war as having dissipated as a central issue, or do you think it will be the economy?
Well, I hope that neither the war nor the economy are issues, is an issue, because I hope the president will have all of our troops out and that we will have stopped the bombing and that we won't be paying mercenaries to fight in Indochina. I'm afraid that may not be so, but I hope it will be so. I hope the president will have everybody back to work, at least those who were working when he came into office. So I hope that they won't be issues to that degree, but I believe that they ought to be issues to the degree that, for example, on the war, there ought to be a public confession and public discussion about that war so we won't get in that kind of mess again. And I think there's enough blame to go around, myself included.
Do you feel the 1972 campaign will be as divisive to the Democratic Party as it was in 1968?
I don't think so. It's a wholesome thing that we have so many candidates. When I was chairman of the party, I appointed the McGovern Commission and the O'Hara Commission to try to make sure that the Democratic Party would make itself truly democratic and representative, and it hadn't been up to that time. I think the primaries are wholesome, and I believe that the number of candidates is a wholesome thing, because it gives people a sense that they do have a real choice and that they've truly been involved in the choice.
What effect do you think Alabama Governor George Wallace will have on the 1972 presidential campaign?
Well, I don't think that he'll amount to as much as he did last time. I think he'll certainly be a factor, but I don't think that that'll hurt the Democrats. I'd rather there be a man like Wallace than to have that kind of divisive, abhorrent racism involved in either party.
Now, you define yourself as a new populist candidate. Could you explain on that as to your feelings as to what this means to the general public?
Well, it means a better distribution of income and of the good things in our society. For example, health. I don't think health ought to be a matter of charity, and I don't think it ought to be a matter of whether one is rich or not. But too many people can't buy health. They just can't afford it today, and that's wrong. And secondly, there ought to be a better distribution of power. People feel that they just can't have any impact on institutions or on government or anything else. And we have got to return to the importance and power of the individual. And thirdly, it means a return to idealism as the basis for foreign policy. We say we believe in the worth of every human being, and yet we don't seem to act that way insofar as our cozying up to military dictators and carrying on that war and giving economic and military aid to Pakistan where all that killing and repression is going on. We've got to change that.
Senator, how do you feel at this point? How do you assess your chances of obtaining the Democratic nomination?
Well, I don't know yet. I'm trying to get into 2 or 3 states a week, particularly those where there are primaries, and I hope to make up my mind one way or another by the 1st of October. Up to now, I'm encouraged.
You say you're not going to run again for the Senate. Would you accept a vice presidential spot on the ballot?
Only if I could be guaranteed that I wouldn't be elected.
You don't like the vice president's job?
No, I'd much rather be in the Senate. In the Senate, you wear no man's collar. In the vice presidential office, of course, you wear one man's collar, and I just would be terribly uncomfortable with that kind of a job.
it's going somewhat better than it was at this point last year, and hopefully we'll get all the schools open at the same time instead of maybe some a month later. And hopefully the schedules are going to be somewhat improved over last year. We are, of course, having to add some additional buses over what we used at the closing of school last year. The mechanical personnel, we have a shortage there, of course, and have a shortage of facilities and equipment to service the vehicles. Of course, you keep adding and you don't get all the other things to add to it at the same time.
The Sunday afternoon doubleheader marked the second year that the two teams have met, and last year it was the crosstown rival that took all three games of the tripleheader. The game was scheduled as a kind of picnic affair and a little fun. But then again, when the two teams meet, there's always that competitive air, win, lose, or for fun. This is Ken Kuntz with the Little World Series of Newsmen at Bryant Park.